Hello and welcome to the City of the Future. Over this series of videos I'm going to be restoring a Sinclair C5. In this first part we'll look at how you go about buying a C5, assess the work needed on the vehicle and of course take it out for a test ride. Now, you're probably wondering why a Sinclair C5. Well, I was walking through London one day and came across a beautifully restored DeLorean, complete with flux capacitor and mist diffusion, and I thought to myself, what a great project that must have been. Now, a second-hand clapped-out DeLorean will set you back about £30,000, aside from which I don't know anything about fixing cars. So I looked around for a more manageable project, and Sinclair C5 was the best thing I could come up with. So what makes this a good project for me? Well, the C5's based largely on bicycle parts. Now I ride a bike to the station and keep it on the road, so hopefully I can cope with that. There's some simple electrical and electronic components, and I know a bit about that too through my job as a support engineer. There's the famous Sinclair brand, synonymous with technology in the 1980s. And of course it's suitably retro, which fits in with my interest in old technology. So how do you go about buying a C5? Well, the first thing you need to decide is what sort of condition machine you want to buy. You might be after a real challenge, in which case a C5 that's spent the last 30 years on an allotment and is missing various key parts, which you'll then have to source, and that in itself could be a real challenge. Or like me, you might want to buy one that's complete and in reasonable condition and hopefully just needs a bit of light work to get it into shape. You could also buy a machine that's already been restored by an enthusiast, so you could just jump in and enjoy it. And incredibly, from time to time, boxed and unused C5s do still come up for sale, although they command silly prices, usually thousands of pounds. And then if you bought one, would you really want to risk taking it out onto the road in case you scratched it? Probably not. Anyway, I bought this C5 from eBay for about £420, although I had the added expense of hiring a van because I wasn't sure that it would fit in the back of the car. I'd also recommend keeping an eye on Gumtree, and do sign up to the Sinclair C5 Owners Facebook group, where you'll find lots of useful information, as well as the odd machine for sale, some of them restored by Sinclair C5 experts. If you want an easy time of it, before you part with your cash, do check that it all works under power, that the motor runs, and in particular check that the pod is present and in working order. More about the pod in a minute. Okay, so we've got the C5 up onto the workbench to give it a bit of a visual check over. And overall, the news is good. There's a few scrapes and scraps here and there on the bodywork. Hopefully we'll be able to sand those off somehow. Also, these decals, these reflective pieces on the bodywork and on the wheels are starting to look a bit tatty and a bit scruffy, so we'll have to replace those. The lights, front and back, are working and all present and correct. The switch, however, which turns the lights on and off, is starting to look a bit rusty. The rear wheel is a bit squeaky, it feels a bit loose too, so that'll need some investigation. This C5 came with a car battery. The original Sinclair battery would have been a much smaller unit and probably better suited to the application, but it seems to work okay. I did get with the C5 though this original Sinclair C5 charger. There it is, and it does look like it's seen better days. I think this C5 power pack, as it's branded, would have sat on top of the battery, enable it to be charged up. You would have got a similar type of cap to sit on the battery, and instead of this unit here, you would have got a key providing some sort of rudimentary security, but I didn't receive anything like that with this unit. Okay, so now a little bit more about that all-important pod I mentioned earlier on. So here we can see that the pod's got two indicators on it, two bar graphs. The one on the right is showing us the charge state of the battery. So this battery pack's about half full. The one on the left, which is topped and tailed by these two yellow LEDs, shows the amount of current flowing through the motor. So here we are stopped, as you'd expect, no current flowing. But if I press this switch, which activates the motor, we saw the bottom green LED come on, showing us that a small amount of current is flowing. And obviously this is all chocked up on the workbench, so we'd expect that to be at a low level. Should be on the road, encountering some resistance, you'd expect that to be, I don't know, 50%, and going up a hill, you might find it goes into the red up towards the top end of the display. But anyway, that's a working pod, so that's a really good sign. Moving on to the handlebar section, well, it's freely turning, the wheels are freely moving, but these brakes, left and right brakes, have seen better days. This left one, the cable's very tatty and doesn't seem to be doing anything at all, and I've had a quick look at the brake blocks and they're also looking worn. This is all present and correct, although I've managed to damage one of these rubber hand grips, which is a bit of a shame. I took a bit of a tumble in it whilst taking it out for a spin in the early days, and unfortunately that's probably not a lot I can do about that. Both the pedals present and working, and over here the maker's mark, this one made in the UK, and looks like this unit rolled off the production line in October 1985. So around the back we've got the boot, complete with lock and original Sinclair key, which is a nice touch. In order to gain access to the motor, the electricals, and have a little look at the chassis, we can take the boot off. So let's do that now. So there's a couple of horseshoe clips in the wheel arch section. There we go. Open the boot up, and hopefully it should just pop off with a little bit of waggling and holding your mouth straight. The boot should come off, and there we go. Okay, so now that we've got the boot off, we can see clearly the motor over on the left over here. We can see the control box, which is an electrical junction box with a few other bits of electronics in. The lid here looks like it's come off, and in fact that's not the original lid, so I'll have to do something about that. We can see the drive chain from the pedals, and we can also see over here the grey of the vehicle chassis. It's got a few spots of rust here and there, but nothing too serious. Okay, so nothing too worrying at first glance. So time to take the C5 out onto the road for a test ride. We filmed this a few months ago with Rob at the controls. So you might have noticed Rob pedalling rather a lot rather than using the motor, and that's because it kept cutting out. After a while though, we did notice by waggling these wires at the back of the pod, it came good. Also, riding the C5 looks like a lot of fun until you see it in amongst other cars and traffic, and then it starts to look rather vulnerable, and you can start to see why people thought the thing rather unsafe back in 1985. Now, I'm no expert on C5s, this is the first one I've owned, so please do get in touch with any comments or ideas you might have about dealing with any of the problems I've found so far. You can leave comments below. I've also set up a Twitter account where I'll put some information between videos, and I've got a website where I'll put some info and photos. Anyway, that's all for this video. Hope you've enjoyed it. Next time I'll be stripping the C5 down to its bare bones to reveal the chassis and dealing with any rust we might find, and hopefully we'll get to the bottom of that wonky wheel. Anyway, that's all. Bye for now.